Welcome to the Family History Guide, Countries, United States, Goal E2, Civil War Records. The American Civil War began on 12 April 1861 when Southern troops in South Carolina fired on Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor. The Civil War was also called the War Between the States and the War of Secession. The war lasted until April 9, 1865. The last battle was fought at Palmito Ranch, Texas on May 13, 1865. Approximately 3.5 million soldiers fought in the war, resulting in almost 750,000 deaths. If you had ancestors in the United States during the years from 1860 to 1866 and beyond, it is very likely that they were affected by the war in some way. It is also very likely that one or more of your ancestors were directly involved in the war. For many years, there have been huge projects to document every soldier who was involved in the Civil War. The National Park Service sponsored the Soldiers and Sailors Database. This website contains information about the men who served in the Union and Confederate armies during the Civil War. Other information on the site includes histories of Union and Confederate regiments, links to descriptions of significant battles, and selected lists of prisoners of war records and cemetery records, which will be amended over time. There are libraries of books and other records about the Civil War. You may wish to learn about the history of how and why your ancestors were involved in this conflict. You can use the Family Search Research Wiki to get started with your research into your Civil War ancestors. Records of the Union troops that fought in the Civil War include lists of awards to soldiers, biographies, casualty records, cemetery records, census records, draft records, naval records, pension records, prisoners of war, service records, soldiers' homes, unit histories, military societies, and many other types of records. Records of the Confederate troops include amnesty records, awards to soldiers, biographies, casualty records, cemetery records, citizens' files, naval records, pension records, prisoner of war, service records, soldiers' homes, unit histories, societies, and many other types of records. The Confederate Citizens Files are Confederate papers relating to citizens or business firms from 1861 to 1865, held in the United States National Archive. These papers consist of 650,000 vouchers and other documents relating to goods furnished or services rendered to the Confederate government by private individuals and businesses. Newspaper accounts during the war contain information about people around the United States who were affected by the war. Many digital copies of these newspapers are available from the Library of Congress Chronicling America Digital Newspaper Project. Accurately identifying your Civil War ancestors depends on research that includes very specifically identifying where your ancestors' family lived during the war in order to determine where the soldier may have enlisted. Many soldiers have the same or very similar names, and it is important to identify the identity of the units they were associated with. Be sure to look for diaries, letters, or other family memorabilia that might be associated with your Civil War ancestors. Learn about your ancestors' lives during the Civil War. Everything you learn will help you find additional records. Check the 1890 U.S. Civil War Census Schedule. Even though most of the 1890 U.S. Census was destroyed, about half of this special census survived. The U.S. Federal Population Census Schedules for 1910 and 1930 list war veterans. The 1910 U.S. Federal Census specifically lists Civil War veterans. Pension application and pension payment records often contain supporting documents such as narratives of events during service, marriage certificates, birth records, death certificates, pages from family Bibles, family letters, depositions of witnesses, affidavits, discharge papers, and other supporting papers. Draft, conscription, and selective service records began in 1863 and typically give the man's name, residence, age, occupation, marital status, birthplace, physical description, and other information. Cemetery records can be found in the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Nationwide Gravesite Locator, or gravelocator.cem.va.gov. The links in the Family History Guide will provide you with valuable information about how to find your ancestors using military records. Study the choices in this goal to develop your research skills.